The entire high society held its breath, waiting for the golden heiress to claim her billionaire prince. But when the chapel doors opened, it wasn't diamonds and designer gowns that walked down that aisle. Sometimes the quietest voice carries the loudest truth. And today, that truth would shatter everything. If you love stories where karma serves the perfect dish of justice, smash that like button and subscribe because this tale will leave you speechless. Let's dive in. Let me tell you about something that happened in Manhattan just 2 years ago. I know it sounds like fiction, but I was there. I watched it all unfold, and I'm still getting chills thinking about how perfectly karma orchestrated every single moment. It started with Nathaniel Blackwood, CEO of Quantum Tech Solutions, worth $48 billion. The kind of man who could buy a small country, but chose to revolutionize renewable energy instead. Everyone in Manhattan's elite circles knew he was destined to marry Victoria Ashworth, the banking heiress whose family controlled 3 centuries of old money and political connections. Victoria was everything society demanded. Blonde, beautiful, Harvard-educated, with a smile that photographers fought to capture. She hosted charity galas that raised millions, sat on museum boards, and her engagement announcement had been anticipated by Town and Country for 3 years. Their union would merge tech billions with banking dynasties, creating a power couple that would dominate 2 industries. But there was someone else in Nathaniel's orbit who was about to prove that destiny has its own plans. Her name was Kaya Washington, and she was the senior project coordinator at Quantum Tech. 28 years old, Stanford MBA, but she came from Detroit where her grandmother cleaned office buildings and her mother worked double shifts as a nurse. Kaya was the type of brilliant that didn't announce itself. She just quietly outworked and outthought everyone around her. While Victoria spent her mornings at SoulCycle and her afternoons planning fundraising events, Kaya was in the lab at 6 a.m., collaborating with engineers on breakthrough battery technology. While Victoria expected Nathaniel to escort her to gallery openings and wine tastings, Kaya was traveling to manufacturing facilities in South Korea, negotiating deals that would save the company millions. Here's what nobody realized. Nathaniel was suffocating. He had built his empire to change the world, but his personal life had become a series of obligations and expectations. Victoria treated their relationship like a crown she had already earned. She planned their future without consulting him, made announcements about their engagement timeline to friends, and had already chosen their wedding venue. She wasn't in love with Nathaniel. She was in love with the idea of being Mrs. Nathaniel Blackwood. The first crack came during the Renewable Energy Conference in Denver last October. Nathaniel's keynote presentation on solar storage technology was failing miserably. The investors weren't buying his projections, the competitors were poking holes in his research, and Victoria was texting him during his speech about whether they should do their engagement photos in the Hamptons or Martha's Vineyard. That's when Kaya stepped in. She had noticed a fundamental flaw in their competitors' criticism and quietly slipped Nathaniel a note with real-time market data that completely validated his projections. Not only did she save his presentation, but her insights led to securing $2 billion in additional funding that same day. On the flight back to New York, something shifted. Nathaniel found himself talking to Kaya about things he had never shared with Victoria. His childhood dreams of creating technology that could end energy poverty, his frustration with the superficial world he was expected to navigate, his loneliness despite being surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Kaya listened without judgment. She shared her own dreams of using her position to create opportunities for kids who look like her in communities that look like where she came from. For the first time in years, Nathaniel felt seen by someone who wasn't calculating what they could gain from knowing him. Victoria noticed the change immediately. She started showing up at the office more frequently, always with photographers in tow for some charity event or another. She would interrupt Nathaniel's meetings with Kaya, making comments about how cute it was that Nathaniel was so hands-on with his staff. She began excluding Kaya from key meetings, subtly undermining her authority and spreading whispers that Kaya was overstepping her role. Her role. But Victoria made a fatal error. She underestimated who she was dealing with. Kaya had grown up navigating spaces where she wasn't wanted or expected to succeed. She had learned to let her work speak louder than words and to respond to hostility with excellence. While Victoria was playing social games, Kaya was revolutionizing how quantum tech approached international expansion. The breaking point came at the Metropolitan Museum Gala in March. Victoria had bought a table for $50,000 and invited Manhattan's most influential families to what she was privately calling her pre-engagement celebration. She made sure photographers captured her arriving with Nathaniel, her hand possessively on his arm, her 3-carat promise ring catching every flash. Kaya was there too, but as part of the working event. Quantum Tech was sponsoring the museum's new sustainability exhibit, and Kaya had coordinated every detail of their involvement. She wore a navy blue dress she had bought at Nordstrom Rack, but her confidence and competence made her stand out in ways that had nothing to do with designer labels. Victoria saw an opportunity to humiliate her rival publicly. During the cocktail hour, she loudly announced to a group of society reporters that she and Nathaniel would soon be expanding their little foundation to help disadvantaged people get basic job training. Her eyes found Kaya across the room as she continued. It's so important to give back to people who haven't had our advantages, don't you think? The cruelty was breathtaking. Victoria was using charity work as a weapon to remind everyone present of their respective places in the social hierarchy. But what happened next was pure karma in action. Dr. James Patterson, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist and museum board member, had been listening to Victoria's performance. He walked directly over to Kaya and in a voice loud enough for the reporters to hear said, "Ms. Washington, I've been following Quantum Tech's breakthrough on solid-state batteries. Your supply chain innovations are revolutionary. Have you considered publishing your research? MIT has been looking for exactly this kind of practical application." The room went silent. Here was one of the most respected scientists in the world, publicly acknowledging Kaya's intellectual contributions, while Victoria's charity comments hung awkwardly in the air. Several other industry leaders joined the conversation, and within minutes, Kaya was surrounded by people who wanted to hear her thoughts on renewable energy policy, international manufacturing, and technology ethics. Victoria stood frozen, her cruel smile still plastered on her face, as she watched the power dynamic shift in real time. The reporters who had been eager to hear about her engagement were now frantically taking notes about Kaya's insights on climate technology. Nathaniel watched all of this unfold from across the room, and something crystallized in his mind. He saw Victoria's ugliness fully exposed, her need to diminish others to feel important, her complete lack of genuine substance, her treatment of his life partner as a threat to be eliminated. And he saw Kaya handling the situation with grace, intelligence, and dignity, turning Victoria's attempt at humiliation into a showcase of her own expertise. That night, Nathaniel made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't continue living a lie just because it met other people's expectations. He was in love with Kaya, not despite their differences in background, but because of everything those differences had taught her about resilience, authenticity, and genuine accomplishment. But Victoria wasn't finished. When she sensed Nathaniel pulling away, she decided to force his hand. She planned a surprise engagement party for the following week, complete with a live stream for her social media followers, a custom ring from Tiffany, and save-the-date cards for what she had decided would be the wedding of the century. She invited 300 of Manhattan's elite to the Rainbow Room, hired a string quartet, and even arranged for drones to capture aerial footage of the moment when Nathaniel would propose. She had scripted every detail except for one crucial element, Nathaniel's consent. When he walked into the party and saw the "Congratulations on your engagement" banner, when he watched Victoria posing with photographers as if they were already married, when he heard her giving interviews about their wedding timeline, he realized he was looking at his future prison warden, not his life partner. Meanwhile, Kaya was in her apartment, drafting her resignation letter. She couldn't watch the man she loved be trapped in a relationship that was essentially a business merger disguised as romance. She had decided to take a position with a renewable energy startup in California, putting 3,000 miles between her heart and the reality she couldn't change. In that resignation letter, she told Nathaniel everything she had never allowed herself to say. How she had watched him build something meaningful from nothing. How she had seen his genuine desire to solve the world's energy problems. How she had fallen in love with his mind, his integrity, and his vision for a better future. She told him that she was leaving because she respected him too much to watch him sacrifice his happiness for social expectations. The next morning, Nathaniel found the letter on his desk. Reading Kaya's words broke something inside him and awakened something else, the courage to live his own life instead of the life everyone else had written for him. He canceled 3 meetings and spent the day driving to every place in the city that reminded him of their conversations, their shared dreams, their quiet moments of connection. He found Kaya at JFK Airport, boarding pass in hand, ready to start over in a place where nobody knew her story. What happened next was the kind of conversation that changes everything. Raw, honest, and long overdue. Nathaniel told her that he had been sleepwalking through his life for so long that he had forgotten what genuine happiness felt like. And what made him happy was her. Not because it was easy or expected, but because she challenged him to be better, to think deeper, to care more. But the universe wasn't finished with its karma delivery. 3 days before Victoria's planned wedding announcement, her carefully constructed world began to crumble. A former business partner of her family's investment firm came forward with evidence that the Ashworths had been running what amounted to a Ponzi scheme for the past 5 years. The FBI raided their offices on a Tuesday morning, seizing computers, files, and freezing accounts. The investigation revealed that the Ashworth family fortune was built on fraudulent investments, embezzled client funds, and forged documents. Victoria's father was arrested, her mother fled to Switzerland, and their Manhattan penthouse was seized as evidence of ill-gotten gains. The woman who had spent her life looking down on others for their modest backgrounds was revealed to be nothing more than the daughter of sophisticated criminals. The society that had worshipped her now turned away, their loyalty as shallow as their values. But the most devastating blow came when investigators discovered that Victoria had known about her family's crimes for over a year. She had been actively seeking to marry Nathaniel, not despite his money, but because she knew her family's stolen fortune would soon be exposed, and she needed his legitimate wealth to maintain her lifestyle. The scandal broke on every major news network simultaneously. Banking Heiress's family charged with $800 million fraud. Victoria Ashworth, from society princess to federal investigation. The fall of Manhattan's golden family. Victoria's world collapsed overnight. The charity boards expelled her. The museum galas uninvited her. The friends who had envied her position now wouldn't return her calls. She went from penthouse to studio apartment, from designer gowns to job interviews, from society pages to court documents. Meanwhile, Nathaniel and Kaya were planning something beautiful. They had decided to marry in a small ceremony in Kaya's hometown of Detroit, surrounded by the people who had shaped her into the woman he loved. Her grandmother, the cleaning lady who had worked 3 jobs to pay for Kaya's education. Her mother, the nurse who had taught her that service to others was the highest calling. Her younger brother, the teacher who had followed Kaya's example of using success to lift up their community. The wedding took place in the same church where Kaya's grandparents had married 60 years earlier. There were no society photographers, no designer gowns worth more than a car, no guest list designed to impress anyone. Just 2 people who had found genuine love in a world full of artificial connections, surrounded by a community that understood the value of both. But Nathaniel wanted to do one more thing. He arranged for the wedding to be live-streamed to quantum tech employees around the world. Not as a publicity stunt, but as a message. He wanted everyone to see that success doesn't require you to abandon your values, that love doesn't require you to change who you are, and that the most important partnerships are built on mutual respect and shared vision. The response was overwhelming. Employees from every division sent video messages of congratulations. Industry leaders who had worked with Kaya sent flowers and notes of admiration. Most surprisingly, hundreds of young women of color in tech reached out to thank Kaya for showing them that they belonged in spaces where they weren't expected to thrive. Victoria watched the live stream from her new studio apartment in Queens, where she was learning to live on the salary from her job as a financial advisor for middle-class families. The irony was thick. The woman who had once looked down on people for their modest means was now serving clients who had more integrity in their little fingers than she had shown in her entire privileged life. But here's the thing about real karma. It's not just about punishment. Sometimes it's about transformation. Victoria's fall from grace forced her to confront who she really was underneath all the privilege and pretense. She began to understand that respect earned through honest work felt infinitely better than admiration based on stolen money and social manipulation. 6 months after the wedding, I had the chance to interview both women for a documentary about women in business. Kaya had been promoted to Chief Innovation Officer at Quantum Tech and was overseeing the company's expansion into renewable energy infrastructure for underserved communities. She spoke about her work with the same quiet passion that had first attracted Nathaniel, but now with the confidence that comes from knowing your worth isn't determined by other people's approval. Victoria was there too, not as a subject but as part of the film crew. She had taken a job with an educational nonprofit that helps families recover from financial fraud, work that drew on her personal experience with both sides of that equation. When I asked her about her transformation, she said something that stayed with me. I spent 30 years thinking I was better than other people because of what I was born into. It took losing everything to learn that the only thing that makes you better is what you choose to do with whatever you've been given. The real twist in this story isn't just that the quiet woman won over the flashy heiress, it's that everyone involved found their authentic selves in the process. Nathaniel learned that genuine partnership feels different from social obligation. Kaya discovered that her worth didn't depend on other people's validation. And Victoria learned that rock bottom can be the foundation for building something real. Today, Nathaniel and Kaya's foundation has provided renewable energy solutions to over 50 communities that had been ignored by traditional utility companies. They've created scholarship programs that have sent hundreds of kids from underserved communities to top engineering schools. And they've proven that when you build something on authentic love and shared values, it creates ripples that extend far beyond your own happiness. The society that once worshipped Victoria slowly began to evolve too. Kaya's grace and intelligence forced them to confront their own shallow values. They began to understand that true worth isn't measured in trust funds or family names, but in character, contribution, and courage. Every year on their anniversary, Nathaniel and Kaya return to that little church in Detroit to renew their vows. Not for the cameras or the society pages, but as a reminder that the most beautiful love stories aren't written in gossip columns. They're lived in quiet moments of support, understanding, and genuine partnership. And Victoria? She's found her own version of redemption. She met a teacher at one of the financial literacy workshops she runs, a man who fell in love with who she had become, not who she used to pretend to be. Their wedding announcement didn't make the society pages, but it made something better. It made them happy. The church where it all began now hosts dozens of weddings each year for couples who choose substance over style, authenticity over appearance. And every time those doors open and a bride walks down the aisle, there's a whisper in the air, a reminder that karma doesn't always come with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it comes quietly, like truth, like love, like a brilliant woman who was always there, waiting for the world to notice what was right in front of them. Sometimes karma doesn't need to destroy people to teach them lessons. Sometimes it just puts the right person in the right place at the right time to show everyone what real worth looks like. If this story reminded you that authentic love always wins in the end, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe for more real stories about real people who prove that good things happen to good people. What would you have done in Kaya's position? Let me know in the comments below.